Hey, and we're live here. Welcome to the Late Show here. I'm your host, Lancelot Chaubert. I'm here with John Wiswell. John is an American science fiction and fantasy author whose short fiction has won the Locus and Nebula Awards, has been a finalist for the Hugo British Fantasy and World Fantasy Awards, and his debut fantasy novel, I think I got a copy up here. Whoa, hey, hold on. That's still open.
It's a limited edition reverse cover.
That's right. Oh, this one? Right? Is it flipped? Let's see if we can flip it.
There
Boom.
we go.
We did it, team. Are yours flipped? They looked normal to me.
Yeah, I reflipped them.
Okay. Hey, we flipped it back and reversed it here. Someone you can build a nest in. I got to hear an excerpt of this live, the KGB reading. So we'll talk a little bit about that. But John's short fiction is characterized as making outlandish and unsettling concepts feel familiar, often overlapping with metaphors for disability, while also frequently having a lighthearted and clever tone. He has written fiction for nature, fantasy, science fiction, Lightspeed, Tor.com, NoSleep Podcast, Uncanny Magazine, etc., etc. And that came out from DAW. Are you a late nighter?
Yeah. I would always rather stay up late than get up early. But being an adult, you don't always choose.
The sun chooses you.
Like, yeah, exactly.
Like
sometimes the
like, I choose you, Pikachu. Like, if a Pokeball is actually dark inside and they don't really want it, the light we see coming out is actually just refracting off the back of the ball.
Off the back of the blackout curtains that Pikachu's right.
It's like, come on, man. Oh, great. Yeah. How late? We talking like you did like late shift and.
Yeah, I always found that if you stayed up late, nobody would bother you while you wrote. So I also, a lot of the more interesting things used to come on TV. That's when the anime would creep on. That's when like the foreign cinema would creep onto the television. So
Adult Swim, what's this?
Yeah. Oh, yes, exactly. Adult Swim, exactly an outgrowth of that. And then also, I've always sort of just connected with people around the planet, which often means like if you want to talk to somebody, you better be up really late.
Yeah. I got buddies in Alaska, and then I like text them at 8 a.m. They're like, "Stop, please."
Yeah.
No souls hour.
And then also, like, if nighttime is your only free time and you play a half decent video game, then suddenly it's a late night because it's like, oh, I don't know where the last 5 hours went, but I'm going to be in trouble tomorrow.
Oh man, yeah, or a really good book. I had that problem with Christopher. I don't know if it's Ruccio's Empire of Silence recently.
Yeah,
that book was a problem in terms of adulting.
For a while, the thing above 5 stars for me was I stayed up late enough. I got sick reading a book.
Oh,
and I was like, that's like the sixth star.
like the flu.
Yeah. Oh, well, I gave myself bronchitis from reading Helene Wecker's The Golem and the Genie.
Okay. Yeah.
So like, that's like God tier, right? That's not a mere 5-star book. That's you stayed up past midnight on too many consecutive nights to the point at which you needed antibiotics. That's simply New York Times Book of the Year material.
This book sent me to the vet. Not the doctor.
No. It was an emergency.
I'm getting rabies shots.
Yeah.
That was actually I did an arc review of that like ages ago on a website I did of Rabid, the history of the world's most diabolical illness of like all the people in history that got rabies. They argued Achilles got rabies.
Really?
Mm-hmm. That's why it would like go all Hulk berserk. Oh. I don't know if I buy it or not, but it was a fun argument. But I feel like that's a Patrick Rothfuss kind of blurb. Like this book gave me typhoid.
Yeah.
or Pratchett, like Pratchett. Best book I read this week. It gave me yellow fever. Like
yes,
man.
You know the Book of Job. This book did that to me.
Right,
6 stars.
But at the end of it, I got to talk with God. Yeah,
he told me and he gave me even cooler stuff, so we're fine.
Hey, truth. Hey, we saw. I don't know if I've ever talked about this outside of my wife. We got to see Paul Giamatti perform the entire Book of Job.
Ooh.
We lived through the Joplin tornado, and that his response to help the disaster Theodore of War from here in town came into Joplin, and they just let him perform the entire Book of Job. So it's like, I mean, that's a good way to respond to a disaster if you're gonna have theater, you know.
That is kind of odd. Yeah, I mean, terrible circumstance, but kind of awesome.
Yeah, it was very awful. I mean, I wrote this one as a response. Harry Rides the Danger as a response to, it's a children's horror book, which is kind of more your speed, but it was used for trauma therapists to help like kids debrief like horrific things like that. And it was in the wake of that. It was like very, very visceral, these children play acting tornado and things like that. Like you find that art heals as you're making it and interacting with it. Obviously it makes you sick too. Like,
Sure.
But on the other side of it, have you found as it improved your life or well-being in other ways?
Before we do that, I have to ask the Paul Giamatti performance of the Book of Job.
Oh, sure.
Because weather had devastated an area. I mean, the Book of Job ends with God showing up as a weather event.
It does.
Was that?
And
did the audience talk about how like this feels insensitive, or that's feeling very, very poignant?
Well, that's a fun thing. That's actually the fun thing about Theater of War, and I've seen multiple things here. So my wife, I didn't mean to talk about all this, but my wife's actually from Ferguson, and we moved to New York like right when Hurricane Sandy happened, and we were in Tunisia on our honeymoon, the year of the Arab Spring, and I said,
wow.
we did Galveston and Katrina. So like these sort of things happen a lot. In various ways, and but so when we've seen them here, they did the first one we saw was Antigone and Ferguson. We knew about them because of the Joplin thing, but they brought all of these performers from Ferguson, and including families of people that have been incarcerated or shot, and then like police officers and like all kinds of people from the community to sing as the Grecian choir. Wow. And then talk about this. And so what they did, they perform Antigone, and then afterwards they do a question and answer. And it's mostly with people in the audience. Like the first invitees are people who like have suffered like violence at the hands of police, or were debriefing trauma after having shot someone, or these kinds of things. We saw King Lear at a Bronx hospital that deals with mental health. And Lear is about a tyrant losing his mind and staying on the throne. Completely irrelevant, but it's a it's a wonderful piece about that. And so they did the same thing. Hey, what's your family going through in terms of dementia? And so it's insensitive in the way that sometimes life doesn't come with a trigger warning.
Yeah.
And so to use my name in a pejorative sense, like art can kind of lance the boil and like, and actually get us somewhere, Yeah. So it's a long answer. Yeah, it does end with a storm. But it gave voice in a way that it might not have. And like, you're still gonna have like old ladies who like remember his first works who are like, Paul Giamatti's on the stage. I don't care that I lost everything. It's all right. And I was like, look, extreme home makeover. They say that person's house. That kind of thing. So,
I mean, as an artist, like you would love to be able to change people's lives more, right? But he isn't like infinitely rich, and that is sort of the greatest gift that he could possibly give to people who have lost a lot. It is wonderfully generous, and if it touches that audience, then it is truly a beautiful act.
Oh yeah, it's incredible, and it's funny too because like years later, I also haven't talked about this in public forum, but years later we were watching Macy's Day Parade, and I swear it was Paul Giamatti that came up to us and spent the entire parade just BSing with us and would not tell us his name and would not tell us what he did for a living. Like he had a beanie on, and so it was a little obscured. Tara's like 80% there, but I'm like convinced this was him. This stuff just happens in the city, and so for me, this is like weird echoing moment. For her, she's like doubting it the entire time. I was like, dude, he was just like watching balloons with us all afternoon, man, and like heckling. Yeah, it's a gift. It's like the butcher, the baker, and the novel stick maker. Like,
yes,
which I could use for motivation sometimes.
Just come to the local theater, and I'll write a book in front of you. Yeah. You won't be able to read it because I'll be making it, but you can be there in the front row.
That's what Harlan would do.
Yes, in the window.
in the Barnes and Noble, and Robin Williams outside saying, "All right, everyone, give us," doing his shtick, and I, it was all about, is this blue collar or is it not? I kind of like that. Like, I thought, I mean, a guy like Sanderson or Rothfuss or Martin probably couldn't do it with spoilers or whatever, but like, it kind of be fun to like do some live streaming of like, here's what I'm drafting for a short story, and just
Sanderson has live streamed from documents before.
Really? Like while he's editing and stuff?
He just is not. He's picked what he's going to write with the audience.
Yeah.
Because he's not going to write the end of the next Cosmere book in front of you. And I think I found that daunting, but also deeply charming. I've wanted to do like just the Harlan Ellison thing, because at least the writing in the window, they can't see that it's terrible, right? They don't know that I
just
can't
draft it
spell
beforehand, and
thoroughbred.
you're just like transcribing your own work. Like, it's actually fifth draft. Like,
although when I teach short story writing, if there's time at the end of the workshop, if it's online, I will screen share a Google Doc and co-write with the class and let them see me mess up in real time.
That's great. Yeah, see, I like that. Like, even on my published works, I have like there's probably earlier ones I could do, but the first one was actually my high school like newspaper. So it's like this unbroken stream of like less and less shitty progress. Like, I kind of like it. And like, I thought about going all the way back to like the 4th grade graphic novel, which is kind of what On Writing is for Stephen King. Like, somehow he tricked us into buying something he wrote when he was 7. It's like right there with the notes on it. And, him re-editing pieces he got rejected just because he's Stephen King now and he can get them sold. But yeah, I think there's something to that. I think that's kind of, I don't know, it's humanizing in a way that kind of curbs some of that weird parasocial relationship stuff that crops up, especially for some of these real big names, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's easier to demystify now in the age of the internet. I think when King published On Writing, the internet was nascent enough that he was demystifying through parts of it. Right? The story about the nail with all the rejection letters on it. Really, a lot of people had never heard that sort of thing happen to ultra popular writers before. Now it's easier, right? You can tweet it out, and I try to regularly be like, "Hey, everybody, I got rejected today. I don't like it. I just wanted you to know that happens to me too."
Yeah, exactly.
This is not unique. One time I published a flash, and then over on my Patreon I just put up, here's the first draft, so that you could see like how bad it was when it started, and also how it changed. And then I put every ensuing draft up to the thing that you'd read in a magazine, just to kind of show the process, to try to peel back some of the layers. Because it's very easy, especially the more beginning a writer you are, to think the finished product is just indicative of the writer sum total. They are successful. They make polished stuff. It's not that way. And I really detest it. I mean, I detested being on the other side of it, right? It feels terrible to think I can't string 3 sentences together that feel great, and here Mark Twain is all zingers.
Yeah, that's maddening. Even more maddening, I think, his autobiography, all of the crazy stuff he said in that he like did that to a court stenographer, just pacing around the room. Well, Sheila, here's the crap we're going to talk about our neighbor today. Just like 2 volumes of it, and then the University of California can't publish it for 100 years, it's
though.
Yeah, it's and it, I mean, in some ways he's not wrong about, just whatever comes to mind, because that's kind of the way parties work, I guess. But yeah, man, I do. And I think too, we kind of have an aversion to this with George Lucas and the way he did Star Wars, but Stephen King revised The Stand and put back in like Trash Can Man, which was the version I read.
Yep.
And I don't know how that novel works without that character.
Yeah. The ending just works so much better with him beefed up as he is in the uncut version.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. And like, he still stands out in my mind as this like mecha villain, like that. Yeah. It's just remarkable piece. Were you a Clarion guy, or how'd you get your start? You just started drafting, sending them out, or?
My story's kind of winding, but after many years of just trying to hack it on my own with not much community, I attended the Viable Paradise workshop, which is a 1 week long workshop. So I have a lot of disabilities. Attending a longer workshop, A, isn't really financially tenable for me, or wasn't back then. And also B, physically wasn't really tenable for me. And it's wonderful. I'm not shaming anybody who has the like 3 or 4 weeks financially or physically or whatever. That's great because it has benefited some people. But for me, the 1 week was about as much as my body could actually take. And it was magical. It did seriously help me redirect some of my attention to things I needed to work on, in particular, how to write for other people rather than just writing for myself, which is a crucial balance for a neurodivergent writer. Because abled audiences often have trouble understanding neurodivergent people's narratives. And that workshop helped me wrap my brain around rendering the way you think accessible to people who think differently. And so like that wasn't the lesson. That wasn't like a lecture of the workshop, but after going through it, it really helped me understand how that functioned in a way that no like critique partner or beta reader or book like Stephen King's On Writing had been able to get through to me before. It really was wonderful. More wonderful than that, though, was certainly the peer group I got to go with. So many of them stuck together, and I mean, we wound up beta reading for each other a lot and being there to support each other as we got more rejections. Because, just because you go to a workshop doesn't mean you suddenly sell everything.
I'm miserable and I want company.
And like
great.
It is very helpful to have that support group that gets it. They're like, yes, I too was rejected by Uncanny Magazine. This is hard. Or like
who just interviewed you?
Yes. Oh well, I mean now I've been in Uncanny Magazine several times, but I was rejected many times before they published anything by me, because often most of us go through a bunch of rejections as we hone our voice, as we hone our tool set. One of the things that I needed to learn was you're not trying to write so that you avoid rejection. You're trying to write to grow. It doesn't matter if this next story sells. Is your tool set broader? Are you a stronger writer on the other side of the next set of things you're going to write? Because hopefully then you'll be better at being true to yourself. And again, whether or not that sells isn't what really matters, that you're expressing yourself and more in tune with what you care about than you were before. The self part of the art is this thing that nourishes you and that would make you really want to keep going. Because 8 cents a word is not the thing that's going to make you want to keep going to the end of time.
Well, it worked okay for Bradbury back in the day, but inflation has moved a little.
Yes, just a wee bit.
No, it's true. It's it's kind of the difference between the chess mindset and the go mindset. Which I was really happy that Rothfuss picked up on that when he did the whole passage on talk in his books. But beautiful game, a game where you learn, a game where it's your best game versus the other person's best game. You can have as many undos as you want in order that our two best games come together so that we can learn to the top of our intelligence, as opposed to the chess like, you didn't see my knight there. Now I got you. Just like get the little, like
you weren't expecting me to move in the shape of an L. Now you are doomed.
You didn't see I had a 6-way fork. So I love that posture of learning, like life learner. Some of my Buddhist friends say beginner's mind, or my Eastern Orthodox friends would say the theology of play, like that kind of iterative riffing that comes with it. And the other piece too, Silverberg said in Science Fiction 101, I was able to correspond with him a little. He's 89 now. It's just still getting it done, still attending every Worldcon. But he said some of that, just like keep them in the mail, because man, like sometimes it's just like why am I sending a fantasy piece to Neil Clark? He hasn't published any of them outside the fantasy sci-fi blend, you know. And he's a lovely person, and I've been able to interact with him at Heliosphere and other stuff. But like, some of that's just like, oh, that ends up in this market a lot quicker. I think that's just some of the audience stuff you were talking about. I am curious to circle back a little bit on what, because I'm struggling with this stuff too a little bit. You know, I don't have all of the things, but I definitely have neurodivergent tendencies that I hide pretty well and don't necessarily talk about a lot. But I, you know, some of it's been transitions between like micro thoughts and things like that. I am kind of curious what, if there are any specifics that, you know, this is personal selfishness at this point, but just of what that looked like for you communicating to other people, if they were like cliff notes of what you picked up. But,
yeah. Okay. So you're talking about how did I try to render my neurodivergent ass for people who weren't like me? Like those things? Okay. Yes, sure.
Yeah.
One was slowing down and reducing the number of things that I attempted to express in any given piece, whether it was an essay or a flash story. I was so preoccupied with getting my whole truth out in a 5,000 word short story, which is a recipe for disaster.
Yeah. Or novel. Yeah.
It's also honestly
Not
a normal idea for a novel, unless it's like 10,000 pages long. Because the fact of the matter is that any random human being who's watching this stream, you are more complex than the sum total of the contents of your local library. Like, a human being simply has more complexity to them. So when you try to fit everything that matters to you into every piece of fiction or nonfiction that you write, you bottleneck yourself and you sell yourself short, because you ought to be able to express yourself across many pieces and express yourself with confidence. So I'm going to write this flash, and it's going to be one of my, I want to talk a little bit in this flash about what it was like to date being asexual and not knowing I'm asexual, but only a little bit, not all of dating that way, but just what's some of it. Okay, a few of these observations seem kind of funny. All right, well, what if this is just a flash in which I have some of the funny observations strung together into a plot arc that has a beginning, a middle, and an end, and bam. This has now concisely allowed me to express just a couple of thoughts that will hopefully resonate with the reader through the humor. And I didn't have to tell you everything, because this is now a theme. There's a lot more I can say on. Well, that's what the next story is for. The next 5 stories are for. The next 25 stories are for. You don't need to sell yourself short by trying to cram all of yourself into every piece. So that was one thing, was just trying to measure the material out so that people who didn't think the way I thought would be able to follow it digestibly. Now, the more I wrote, the more I could just fit into a story at a time, right? That's skill. Over time, you write more, you become more adept at honing in on how much you can do through implication. I mean, once I really figured out implication, I think writing became about 10 times more fun. The stuff you don't say that still registers with an audience is by far the most fun. I think it was Stephen Brute. Go ahead.
No, I said that's totally true.
I think it was Stephen. Maybe it was Roger Zelazny who said, if you want the audience to remember something, make them figure it out themselves. Because they will always remember whatever made them feel clever. If you let the audience figure the thing out, the mystery out, a page before the characters do, the audience will remember that solution long after the characters have stopped talking about it. And it can be applicable to the plot, and it can also be applicable to the themes thereafter. And this is one of the ways in which fiction is talking to the audience more than it's talking to the characters. Is what do we not have to say? Because we all have human experience, and we can either realize that something's shared between us, or realize I don't have an experience and I'm having something shared with me. And those things that go unsaid, they linger really powerfully. It was really funny. This is not a writing example, but some writer friends and I have been rewatching the space opera Farscape, which is that's my favorite space opera. I'm not like a Star Wars guy. I'm not a Star Trek guy. But you put a bunch of broke miscreants as a found family on a living space whale, and it turns out that's my jam. But there's this moment.
Did you like Alien?
Yeah, Alien is cool. I don't consider it to be space opera, but
like,
yes.
Yeah.
But also, Alien's a different thing that has a lot of other wonderful qualities about its characterization. Because Alien is a spaceship populated with actual people, not tropes of people. The way like Aliens is populated by tropes of people. Works very well, but for different purposes. But there's this moment in Farscape. So basically, human and an alien, they're both facing certain death. The human goes like, hey, here's this good luck charm my dad gave me. You have it. And the alien's like, does it work? And the human's like, I'm alive, aren't I? Like, have fun with it. And then like they turn around and they're not facing each other anymore. And the alien takes the good luck charm, kisses it, and puts it in his vest. The human doesn't see that. That means this act of I'm kissing the good luck charm you gave me does not validate the other character. What it says is it validates that character more than he could ever know, because this genuinely means this to the character. You didn't say that. None of the characters can comment on it because the other one's not aware. That thing you don't say, that you don't remark on, will last with the audience more than the dialogue that just happened. But the dialogue made it possible. And those unspoken things, once you realize how to build those for the audience, is so nourishing. And it's very fun as the audience too, obviously. Farscape's God knows how old, and I'm still talking about this thing that happened in the season finale of season 1.
Yeah, that's amazing. There's the big ones that come to mind are actually kind of spoilery for other stuff, but like there's a certain person that's met on a certain island in Game of Thrones that do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Okay. It's just like, wait a minute.
Yes. Martin has webs and webs of subtext. That's part of why it takes him forever to write his books. Like, if he was just doing plots where people had sex and stabbed each other, these books would be done. But like,
not at the same time.
He's writing these giant cosmoses that genuinely do mean things to him. The only reason that island stuff happens or works for us is because those webs are there. I am not surprised at all that he's gotten lost in it or gotten stuck in it. That's complex.
Yeah, it's a lot, and it's also like, I was talking with a buddy about this because I wrote a piece on kind of the shadow of Tolkien, because Tolkien almost did this fourth age thing where he's like, actually it just gets really dark when you take out all the elves and magic and everything. And he's like, it turns out they follow this orc goblin cult and they start deconstructing Gondor from the inside out. He's like, I could do it. He's like, but I don't think it was worth doing. And he meant like I couldn't master the genre of thriller, which I think is false. He would have done fine in any genre he touched. But I think it kind of like those letters kind of prophesied grimdark in a way of like, that's what happens when we like go into. But my buddy was pushing back on me, saying, well, he uses the tools of grimdark in the way that Nabokov uses the tools of romance, or uses the tools of something. It's almost Nabokovian's parody of, in a way. And I do, those redemptive arcs are certainly there, and certainly with those subtext moments. I don't know if someone could have written that having not lived through like the Iraq War or something, or the Vietnam era kind of stuff. So I agree with that for sure. And Ralph has said on his live stream for the Narrow Road, I watched that one when he was launching it. He someone was talking about, why didn't so and so do this and that, in this scene, and you say that that they did later, and he said, do you think that I have to show everything that my characters are doing on stage? If so, a lot of them have to take a piss. Like, I kind of like that attitude when it comes to implication. So that's good. What are you reading right now?
My attention is split between 3 books, all of which are nourishing in different ways. One is Genevieve Domova's Monstrous Nights, which is the sequel to Foul Days, which is these two are 2 of my favorite Eastern European influenced fantasy books. They're so the worlds are just full of goblins and demons of that Slavic variety that I grew up with fairy tales of these things. It's not just like the witch and the house with chicken feet, because obviously like everybody's got Baba Yaga, but it's these very specific kinds of creatures and kinds of haunting and kinds of magic that are warmly familiar to me, because to me they are the flavor of the stories my grandma told me when I was like that tall.
Oh wow, okay.
But these are powerfully adult books about a witch who loses her shadow and thus her access to magic, and going on this having to cross this dangerous political border to try to track down who is harvesting shadows and what are they doing with them. And it's very fun. Damova paces these books so punchily. They're not comedies, but they have comedy pacing in that they move very fleetly, which works. It works so well for these things that are very heavy and hard. This is a world of bitter winters and people who have struggled, but who none of whom have given up. And so it's wonderful to see how it comes together. I think Monstrous Nights might be even better paced than Foul Days. But I like them both. I haven't finished Monstrous Nights yet. I will. I'm reading it really slowly just because there are only so many books like this, and Damova can only write so fast.
Yeah. I feel that.
So I'm reading that. I got Liz Moore's The God in the Woods, or God of the Woods, which was this huge book last year that I managed to avoid reading anything about. So every so often I give myself this treat, which is I go to the library, I take a book off of the shelf, I don't pay attention to what shelf it came from, and then I just read it. And I find out what the genre and the plot and the conceits are as I read it. And it's so liberating because we live in this world where you see the commercial and the trailer and the review and the preview before you see the movie, and not knowing anything. It feels like a refreshing privilege. Now, also, though, the one thing I knew was that people honkin' loved this book. Like, this is the most successful book Liz Moore has ever published. I think it sold over 1 million copies or something. So there's probably something to it, right? And it turns out, yes, there is. It's very fun. But even from its opening chapter, I was like, is this a mystery? Is this a thriller? Is this horror? Is there a supernatural element? I don't know. And I love not knowing, right? If I got this out of the horror section, I'd be like, all right, for sure a ghost is in the woods, and that's why the kid's missing. Like, I would know. But I don't know, and not knowing is very fun. But it's also very fun to not know in the hands of a very good storyteller, and Liz Moore certainly is that. And then third, I just, for some reason, started revisiting Stephen King's Bag of Bones. I
haven't read that one.
You, what?
I have not read that one.
You don't have to. It is, I would say, one of the mediocre King novels. King is one of my favorite writers. And so sometimes it's just nice to read your heroes not hitting it out of the park.
Yeah, no, it's true. It actually, I find that to be more illuminating if you're working on craft or things like that.
Yeah.
Because it just shows even ephemera with like nonfiction writers, like these obscure articles Chesterton wrote for the Daily Blackfriars or what, just like these random one-offs. Emerson's essays are just like, he just kind of like goes off the lid,
Yeah. Well, he didn't have a backspace key, so it was harder back then.
That's what Thoreau was for.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's cool. I picked a couple off the street. I've never read Needful Things. It's up here in 1122.
I love Needful Things.
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about it lately.
It's like, because there are a million horror stories that are like, consumerism's bad. Which, like, hey, you're not entirely wrong. But I think Needful Things is one of the most interesting because it's not so much an anti-capitalist book as it is an examination of why we're so attached to an object. Whether it's nostalgia or status or insecurity or family connections. And so, but also it shows how that could be used to destroy you. And so I think Leland Gaunt's probably his best devil-like character. Because he's got like 100 devils across his books. But Leland Gaunt might be
just one.
Or just, might just be one walking dude. Can't be sure. But yeah, Needful Things is fun. I hope you like it.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I'll check it out. My buddy loves it. He was like, yeah, I love to get to this. Spoiler alert for anyone that needs to hit pause, but he's like, I love to get to the end of the book and it's just the Baptists and Pentecostals going to war.
Yep.
I was like, I think your small town experience was very different from mine. But yeah, and the needful piece too that you're getting at, like so much of philosophy comes down to that, like the sublime, all of that stuff, but also the beauty, like what do we really want? And okay, you want that. Why do you want that? And the want behind that want, what do you want that? I think it's a really important question. It's central in all the Neoplatonic thinkers, Boethius, all those guys, Victorinus, and you start digging in there and you realize the thing that you're clinging to on the surface level is just so absolutely transitory to what you could be wanting. So if that's what it's about, I'll probably pick it up sooner rather than later, which is unfortunate because I got homework, but but that's cool. That's cool. Are any other like craft things come to mind lately, like books you read? I've been going back through Dwight Swain's techniques and some other stuff. But yeah, I've got a buddy who's just started a site called writing.com. She was gonna call it Meta Writer, but she helped me edit this one, Emily Monroe, but she's read probably 100 or 200 writing books or over the years, and so she just decided to like kind of catalog them for what you need for problems. So I'm always looking for new ones for her if you got anything to recommend.
Yeah, I don't read a lot of writing books at this point. That's
why I ask, is in case they come.
Yeah, I'm spoiled by just having smart peers, and when I don't know something, I'm like, hey, Arkady, like, how do you make good words? And then things work out. The thing that I've been working on lately, because I'm always trying to learn something. My 2-book contract with DAW is now complete. And so I'm writing a 3rd book. And
congrats.
Thank you. And so the mechanism for this is different than the other 2 books were, because your first novel you sell to you sign with an agent, you sell it to a publisher, and in this case I signed a 2-book deal. So we collaborated on what my 2nd book would be, and then I went and I wrote that and I gave that to them. But now that contract is over, and DAW has the right of, I don't think it's actually called right of first refusal, but basically they get to bid on it first. But they don't want to see the whole book because they'd like to, if we can make a deal sooner, they would like to see 3 sample chapters and a 10-page synopsis or something like that. And this is industry standard. Sorry?
Yeah. Like a proposal. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And it's very close to how most nonfiction new books are just sold. Yeah. It's a little less standard in fiction for you to always do that. This is just what happens some of the time, depending on where you are with a publisher. And I've never done this before because I am a writer who just likes to I like to get in the groove, and I'll be back with 350 pages later. Just like stay right there and I'll be back.
Let me go to my hole.
And I write very small outlines. My outline for someone you can build a nest in was maybe 3/4 of a page. And it was just the big plot beats. You need to get here. This needs to happen. I can't wait for this to happen. And it all builds up to these things in the end that will matter a lot if you build up to them. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I had notes and I had character names and place things that I could draw on if I wanted. But I like to have the bones and then discover the rest of the meat on the page. That's how I like to work because I'm a creature of momentum. Yeah. So it's nice to have a goal. So the thin outline is handy because I know what I'm working to. The next thing, the next twist or the next conflict point or the next relief point. I'm working to that. And here, you want a 10-page outline of the entire book. This is so anathema to the way that I tend to work. And I'm fascinated, right? I want to know, like, how does this work? How do you do this? It's not like, damn the industry for having conventions that are conducive. Instead, it's like other people do this. How does it work?
Yeah.
And part of it is I definitely had to slow way down and use more of the research phase that I usually do to create as many plot beats as possible.
Sure, this.
Yeah. Like, and what do I want to keep, right? So I have this long list of things that could happen, and then I start arranging them. Like, all right, that could go there, and then you start trying to describe the story, right? Because I can write you a 1-page synopsis. I learned that, And now it's kind of fun. Because a one-page synopsis, which you tend to when you submit your novel to places, you tend to submit a 1 or a 2 or a 3-page synopsis, depending on the agent's guidelines or the editor's guidelines. And at first, that's the worst thing in the world. No author wants to do that, right? Like, I grew up wanting to write the great American novel, not the great American one-page. Like, why would I didn't realize I was supposed to fill in my Wikipedia page for this book while I was submitting it. But eventually you come to understand that, like, oh, can you write your favorite movie in 1 page? Yeah, you can summarize your favorite movie. You boil it down to the biggest beats, the things that are most memorable, the things that were most important, and how do they connect? And you miss a lot of connective tissue. You will write maybe the story of Jurassic Park in 1 page and leave out a bunch of characters you like a lot, right? Because you don't need to talk about them there. So the 1 page is kind of like trying to explain your favorite movie to your best friend. And that's fun. 10 page is really different. 5 or 10 pages, you have way more connective tissue, way more meat. And so it required me to, at least for me, to slow down way more and to try to speculate on what the connective tissue would be. Now, I think everybody involved knows, well, the novel I write won't probably be sentence for sentence the same as this. Like, at some point, I'm going to get in there and I'm just going to be like, dude, I just came up with a way better ending. It's going to have the way better ending now. And I'm not going to hand it to my editor. My editor will be like, how dare you write a way better ending? You write a mediocre ending this minute, young man.
I got
but you're just trying to show them. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I got attached to this crappy explosive that killed off half the,
but you're just trying to take them on more of the journey that they will go on in the full book, which is not the most fun for somebody who likes to do an emotional ride of composition the way I do, but I'm starting to understand how it works more. And it's kind of neat just to discover the craft of it. I think this attitude, it helps a lot, because otherwise you default to curmudgeon. The world should just work whatever way I wish it did, which unfortunately wanting that does not make it so. But also it's just neat to see things work different ways, because I know so many writers who write an outline and then write strictly to that outline. And I don't work that way. It's just like, oh, I'm like, it is neat to be like you for an evening. Just to experience this, because I love the process so much. It's just neat to see it from a different way.
I like that. I was kind of working through this recently because I've tried it so many different ways. Outlining, not outlining. I wrote one 50,000 word one in like 4 weeks last year. It was kind of crazy that I didn't even outline at all. And I didn't think that was a possible thing. And then recently I've been looking at, Sanderson released his Skyward outline. And just like, oh, that's interesting the way he does that. Because I know with the last Cosmere book, he said in the text that, I don't know if you've read the 5th one yet, or if you read any of them or not, but he said that he gave 3 different endings to his beta readers because he didn't know what to do. And what we ended up with was like a composite of it. So like he ended up writing a 4th one that was none of those, but he got like feedback on all 3 of these different things. Which is kind of, I don't know, that's kind of a fascinating, he's got enough people helping him now that it's almost like product testing, like.
Yeah, I kind of love that because I fantasize sometimes about giving like half my beta readers one ending and half the other, just to be like, which one of these is better? And then, because you're just imagine half of them will come back being like, you ruined it. And then all right, I'll do the other one. It'll be fine.
Yeah, that literally happened with Doll Hammers. We sent it out to like advanced readers, and the one of the reviewers came back, was like, yeah, I was super happy and funny, and then it got dark and real dark, and I stayed up late weeping, and I don't know if I can go back to sleep. And then I was like, it's not that bad. And then my wife read it because she hadn't read it yet. She was like, you have to change this. So he pulled it, and I did exactly that, like rewrote the entire ending of it to make it somewhat happy. Yeah, and that was not the plan, but it's just kind of funny to see what feedback comes in. I do, man, it's got to be nice to have like alpha, beta, gamma readers and 20 on each, series, and 40 people work for you. It's like, man, it's a crazy system he's got going on there, but that's cool. Well, yeah, I don't know if there's anything. I always ask if there's anything I should have asked that I haven't asked. And, Grady said that was a trap question. Like, yes, you should have asked something better. Like, I don't mean it like that. I know it was funny when he said it, but I just mean like topics that, might not come initially to my head to talk about, or that are just you're researching or whatever.
That's an interesting wide web that you cast. I could see why Grady would call it a trap, but it's not really a trap. It's generous. I think most authors would be like, obviously, you should have asked me to pitch my next book. But,
you should do it.
Yeah, sure, why not? But I'd say, okay. Before that, a topic that's been on my mind a lot is when to walk away from a project that's just not working.
Okay.
Because last year I wrote about 30,000 words of a novel that just didn't work. And I love the themes, and I love the main character, and I love the idea. And I just wasn't able to make it activate. And it was very frustrating. And I love that I live in a digital age where I have it backed up on the cloud, and I have it backed up on my hard drive, and then on a secondary drive. I can always go back to it. I haven't actually failed, because all the material's there, and any day I want, I can go back there, and I can either re-examine all of it, or I can open a blank document and start writing it again. And I can drop all of my old baggage, and I can see if in 6 months I'm in the space to make that book work now. But it was handy. Now in my specific case, the when to walk away is like, well, we're pretty deep into a book that's not working, and you're on a deadline. All right, we should really probably move on now then. And I happen to be exceptionally happy with the book that I'm working on right now. I am giddy to work on it. It has the ingredients I need right now. I have to be vague because it's not announced. I can't, but it and I are getting along great.
Okay, cool.
But that other book, I mean, it lives rent-free in my head. Like, I'd really like to be able to make that thing work someday, because there isn't a book quite like it. And there are things that I can say about the disabled experience from that lens that I've never done before. And I'd really like to get into, because disability is common in my work. So then I'll just, because I guess our time is running short, I'll just segue into, in a few months, my second novel will be out. It is called Wearing the Lion. It is a Greek mythological retelling that is a little bit like the Book of Job meets the Incredible Hulk. It is about a nice himbo Heracles who just absolutely loves his Auntie Hera, goddess of family. He'll do anything to appease her. He builds a great big family, and he keeps slaying all these monsters that he's sent to fight in honor of her. And the one thing he doesn't know is she absolutely hates his guts, and she is the reason he keeps being sent to fight monsters, because she's hoping he'll just fucking die already. It goes places, let's say, when she has this master plan to kill him and accidentally annihilates his family instead of him. And he's like, what I need to find out which god is behind this, and I'm going to get justice for me and Auntie Hera. And so he starts hunting whichever god's behind this, while she, who suddenly realizes what she's been doing this whole time and comes to her sentences, is trying to hide the evidence as best humanly possible. Because if he finds out, it'll destroy him and maybe her too. It was such a great journey to write. It was so interesting to humanize Hera, because often Hera is like one or two dimensional, and she's such a great meaty character. Yeah. And then also to write a Heracles. This is funny, but ever since I was a kid, it's bugged me that Heracles' story is he kills his family and then goes on epic labors and is never really bothered by killing his entire family. I really think he would have opinions about this. And so I got to write about it.
Got rid of those monsters. What's next?
Yeah. Right. And so, like, he can't bring himself to hurt anyone anymore because these hands hurt my children. I can't do this anymore. And so he's faced with this man-eating lion, and he can't bring himself to even hit it. And what do you do when you're in these circumstances? What you do, it turns out, is gradually build the largest, weirdest found family of adopted pets you've ever seen. And so the book, Wearing the Lion, he won't kill and skin it, so he's just wearing a literal giant lion across his shoulders and carrying it everywhere, and it's having a great time. It loves it here.
I got some Samson vibes from that, man.
Yeah.
That's great.
No one had ever tried to pet the lion before, and it goes great. And I won't spoil what he names the lion, but I cannot believe that my publisher let me get away with it. But yeah, so that's my next book, and it is deeply about trauma and PTSD, which is a disability that I think gets kind of paved over or flattened in a lot of fantasy. But then there is disability throughout the book, and not just in like Hephaestus, the one famous disabled god. And it's also about the different kinds of definitions of family and remembering the right thing to do. So yeah, that was really wonderful to write. I'm really excited to see what people think.
That's great. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that for sure. It's such an interesting thing too, because we used to do a classics book club here right before the pandemic, and habits got broken by the 2020. And that was one of the things that went by the wayside. But yeah, so much in Arwood's Metamorphosis and the Theogony and things like that. I mean, you look at these guys, every single one of them super messed up. Like it's not like one or two. Yeah. It's a wild ride on every front. So I'm glad that's kind of what started the Of Gods and Globes thing, is just trying to get some of that interstitial spot between the constellations and the myths, kind of like C.S. Lewis's Space Trilogy. And so, so I'm deep place in my heart for that kind of stuff. So I'll give that a look. Well, John, I know our time's up. I thank you so much for coming. If you didn't see us tonight live, I know you'll be watching it on your morning commute. So we're happy to have John and looking forward to his next work. And we will see you next time with whoever comes next. All right.